Guys, I've got a good one for you today. Well, I think it's a good one anyway. I think you'll agree that it's pretty interesting as a game goes. And it's Knights of the Round. Let's get into it.
Back in the 90s, the arcade still reigned supreme. It was the place to go if you wanted to experience the cutting edge of gaming, so naturally, my friends and I hung out there as often as we could. The nearest arcade to me was on the first floor of our local sports centre, where there are only 2, maybe 3 if you were lucky, arcade machines at a time. And Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, because we weren't allowed to call them ninjas back then, was always the main draw. Later, a Final Fight machine joined it, but it never garnered the same attention as Turtles had, because by that point, we had all discovered an even better arcade to visit. That arcade was in the Metro Centre, which was the largest shopping centre in Europe at that time. It had a huge arcade with all kinds of games, and one in particular caught my eye. It was massive, it had amazing graphics, and it was expensive as all hell, so I hardly ever got to play it. But what I saw, and what I very briefly played, stuck with me for the rest of my gaming life. That arcade was Knights of the Round. Knights of the Round is basically Final Fight crossed with Golden Axe. You play as King Arthur, who is a good all-rounder, or as Sir Lancelot, who is fast but weaker on attacks, or Sir Percival, who is stronger on attacks but slower. And your quest is to beat the crap out of a load of enemy guys until you get to fight King Garibaldi, no, not the biscuit, in order to unite the ancient Britons and make Arthur their king. Along the way, you can level up your characters to make them look cooler and attack harder. This is an essential part of being able to progress through the game, because each of the 7 levels feature progressively harder enemies. If you're not leveling up, you're going to get beaten to a jelly. So try to grab as much treasure as possible and to kill as many enemies as possible without getting hurt yourself. You can stop yourself getting hurt by manoeuvring your character to a position where you can't get mobbed from both sides, and then using the block move. This is achieved by holding down the attack button while aiming away from the enemy. It's tricky to pull off, but you'll get the hang of it. There are various attacks in the game, but they all come down to essentially the same thing, and each one is pulled off by aiming the joystick in a different direction while pressing the attack button. Again, you'll get the hang of this pretty quick. To be honest with you, there's really not a lot to learn with this game. There's also a power attack move, but in contrast to Final Fight, this one doesn't deplete your health when you use it, so that's pretty good. Speaking of health, you can replenish it by picking up salads and other meals, because this game runs on video game logic, where eating food you find in the street somehow makes you more healthy. It's standard beat 'em up fare, but do remember to grab as much food as you can, because you'll need it when taking on the various bosses. There's a boss at the end of each level, and they're all pretty tough, all things considered. You'll need to use your block and your power attack to defeat them, and then you'll find they show up in a marginally weaker form as regular enemies on later levels. Capcom fans will already be used to that, of course, because the same thing happens in Final Fight. The bosses are colourful and imaginative. I really do quite like these. They're pretty tough though, so expect to be using a lot of continues on these guys until you get them figured out. As I mentioned earlier, there are only 7 levels, and they're all decent length but not too long, so although combat can get pretty repetitive in this game, it doesn't outstay its welcome. This is not the greatest of the Capcom beat-em-up games, not by a long shot, but it's still a lot of fun to load up for a quick session now and then. The Super Nintendo is the only console that got a home port of Knights of the Round. Well, except for the CPS Charger, but let's face it, who's counting Capcom's answer to the Neo Geo as a home console, if we're absolutely honest with ourselves? For a long time I thought the SNES version was limited to North America, but it was apparently also available in both Japan and the PAL territories through Germany, albeit in far lower numbers. I've never actually managed to find a German copy of this game, but I did get the chance to play the American version via an emulator. The game is a very faithful port of the arcade original, only now the block ability is on a separate button, which makes it far easier to pull off. The game is all here and it all looks fantastic. Well, I say all here. There are some enemies that are on horses in the arcade version that don't seem to be in the Super Nintendo version, but aside from that, the game is all here and it does look fantastic. It plays really well, and it's a very enjoyable port of the game. Give it a try if you get the chance because it's worth a quick session at the very least. The PlayStation 2 also got a very nice port of Knights of the Round thanks to the Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2. But to be honest with you, it would be a very nice port of the original because it's just the arcade ROM in a custom emulator. But that works really well, and I have to admit, I had a lot of fun playing this version. It's very easy to play using the DualShock 2 controller, and the thumbstick controls worked out very nice. Everything about the original arcade game is here as you would expect, and it all runs very smoothly. If you can't find an arcade version of this game to play, this is the one to try out. Providing you can find a copy of Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2, of course. This game proved rather tricky for me to track down when I was looking to add it to my collection. Still, it was definitely worth the hunt. When all is said and done, this game made a lasting impression on me as a child because it looks amazing. The sprite designs and luscious graphics are a real treat, and I think the fact that I hardly ever got to play this game makes it so much more special for me. Far more than it would likely have been if I'd been able to play it enough to compare it to the Turtles arcade or to Final Fight. Knights of the Round is a decent game. It's definitely one to give a try, but if you do get the chance to play it, I think you'll end up agreeing with me that while it's a good game, it's not a particularly unique game, and there are better games of the same type out there. It's pretty, it's eye-catching, but it doesn't bring enough new ideas to the table, which is a real shame. If you get the chance and you have a choice of which version to play, my advice would be to go with the arcade version, because it's always going to be the best option for a game like this. The PlayStation 2 version comes a very close second, since it is just the arcade ROM running on a PS2, but the Super Nintendo port isn't far behind. Each version is excellent, so you're not missing out, whichever version you go for.
Okay guys, this is an interesting one for me. I have a soft spot for it because of the impression it made on me as a child when I saw it in an arcade. However, it really doesn't stand up to Golden Axe and Final Fight, which is exactly the games that it was basically basing itself off. Ethereal Legend works really well for a beat 'em up. This one could have had a bit more variety to it and it would have been a fantastic classic, but as it stands, it's a pretty decent game. I enjoy playing it, and if you give it a try, I think you'll enjoy it for a couple of sessions as well. And that's all you can really ask for from this kind of game. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you did like this. If you did, remember to click that like button, share it with your friends so that they'll know a good game when they see it, and do subscribe for future videos because there will be more in the future. But until next time, I've been Kirk-Robinson, you've been watching GameHammer Daily, and I'll see you tomorrow. If you liked today's video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you.